Hi. Oh my God, what an amazing session we had today. So I am, as you know, I wear many hats, and today I am focused on this concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so one of my many trainings and certifications is through Cornell University. And Cornell is, I have a little crush, a girl crush on Professor Nishi. Um, uh, just fabulous. And when they speak, they actually, most of the courses are really focused on systemic change. But what they understand that most organizations fail to truly implement is that when people change, that's when organizations change. So there's a human element that I think is really important for us to address. So today was day one of a 3-day symposium. And what I loved about the topics were, they were specifically focused on employee engagement. And I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion coach. So if you need any support, I can be reached at itsallbiggerthanme.com or Tracy, Traci at itsallbiggerthanme.com. But it's not about me. Like, I put all of my information out there because I don't want anyone to think for 1 minute that they were not clear on how to drive inclusion. So I do all these free things. My next book is going to be free. Again, I'm a, internationally best-selling author. I've contributed to 3 books. I'm bringing all these voices together for my next book. And it really is going to have a true focus on equity and inclusion. Partially because we know what success looks like. And I get a little excited. But I love the Cornell community. These people all want to drive change, and everyone's at different levels of their career, and there's different levels of confidence around the topics. But the content, the baseline content is solid. It's all I can say. I get nothing for this. No one's paying me to do this. I'm talking because I know this to be true. So if there's a diversity, equity, and inclusion component of the work that you do, if you're partially evaluated, which I hope everyone is, right, in some way associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's one of the programs that really is valuable. And honestly, they're not all created the same. So let me just put that out there. Anyway, so the session today was specifically focused on, again, this idea of engagement. So there were 2 things, a few notes that I took. I did a report out for my group. We were group 1, and it was just very interesting that leaders, senior leaders, often have experiences that are less than inclusive, right? And so I had several people in one of my breakout groups that talked about their roles. One was the director of HR. Other was the vice president of operations. Someone these roles, these leadership roles, and they're saying, you know what, I get a level of empathy because I've had experiences where I didn't feel included myself. And they talked about how it actually impacts your confidence in your abilities, your decision making, all the things that we wouldn't want for employees, diverse or otherwise. Right? In order for a leader to get the most out of their team, whoever they are, diverse or not diverse, I say the work that I do is around inclusion for all. And again, that's not for everyone, because other people are like, it's about racial justice and racial equity. That's important. I can have those conversations too. But if you're creating a space that is inclusive for all, then whether there's a racial opportunity that needs to be addressed, whether you're the only, woman on a team of men, or the only man on a team of women, or the only introvert on a team of extroverts, whatever it is, whatever area of inclusion, if we've created a culture where everyone feels included, then everyone can bring their best to the job. Then everyone can help you to achieve your business goals even that much more fully, right? Much more effectively. They talked about engagement. And again, just hearing every voice. There were voices from around the country, around the world, actually. It was very diverse. And they all shared, these ideas about what helps them this is what happens when they don't have, a high level of inclusion, right? When employee engagement is being sacrificed for various elements. And one of them, they talked about, this idea of psychological safety. And she mentioned various layers of what influences engagement. And of course, psychological safety is one of those things, right? Being comfortable bringing your full self to the table, feeling like that, your voice matters, feeling like, you even have the capacity, right? Which is another layer of this work. Really feeling like you're in a space where, I can give a little extra today. Psychological safety in an environment comes from the top down, someone wrote. They said leadership needs to step in when there's a need to provide an environment of trust and vehicles to allow open conversation. That was one person's feedback. So we broke into groups, and then each group was able to identify their top 3 nuggets of information. So that was one of the ones I highlighted that I wanted to share today. But I also just thought, I could just come on and really provide some clarity regarding the why. I was talking to a new friend of mine, and she is doing work around, racial equity and inclusion. But again, inclusion, belonging, the idea of justice for all. It's the work that I love. And one of the things she said to me, and it was really interesting because I have oftentimes failed to I always bring my full self to the table, but I tend to focus on the positive. And I do that because, again, the language that I use is just me. It's just who I am. Like, I don't have a 2 Tracys. Anyone who knows me, there's one of me. Right. Right. I don't have a whole lot of masks, although I do curse a lot when I'm not on camera. Sometimes. And I'm Reverend Tracy Harrell. So I should tell you, doctor, right? I'm walking. That's a whole nother conversation, but I'll be walking for my doctorate in a few months. It's very exciting. Another conversation. I already got my certificate and my golden seal and all the things. It's super exciting. Anyway, I say all that to say we all have layers of who we are, right? There's the highly, competent, truly polished professionals that show up in the boardroom when we're having conversations with senior leaders. And then there's the, person when you take your hair down and you're at the beach and you're like, you know what? You're talking about maybe some shenanigans, that is taking place. And there's different energy. And I think being able to bring different energy is one thing, but I loved our host because she talked about 2 solutions, 2 different things or 2 topics that I wanted to address today. So someone focused on this idea of amplification. Amplification happens, and they put a link in this in the chat around, how women in various leadership roles can support each other by amplifying, restating, supporting comments that happen in the boardroom, outside of the boardroom. When someone brings up an idea, there's this whole energy, we've all had it happen where someone else, repeats something you said and you're like, didn't I just say that? And, yeah, that's the oldest, most common, I think, experience that people have. But, it can get deep, even deeper, right? Even a deeper experience around inclusion, So again, an easy, relatively easy, self-fulfilling resource that leaders can do, that anyone can do as an ally, is this idea of amplification. Someone says something, and if you see or hear, it looks like some different credit is being given to someone who repeated something that someone else said, or someone is constantly being ignored, or ideas are just not openly coming from another person. When they say something, right, you have an opportunity to amplify. That's like, we call it the amen corner, right? You double down. You create a space where you're repeating, oh, I like that. You're supporting. Or if you don't like it, say that too. Be honest. But the idea of just creating a space where people don't feel alone. Amplification, super cool. Love that idea. Now, what was also interesting is the hostess, who was super energizing, also brought up a topic of code switching. And she said, there was an article that she loved, and it was called The Costs of Code Switching. And if you don't know what code switching is, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. Many diverse professionals say that this idea of code switching is necessary for their advancement. But they also said that it takes a psychological toll. So since today's experience was really about how do you get the most, it was about engagement, employee engagement, the value of employee engagement. What happens when you don't have it, this lack of trust, and what can you do to increase it, right? So I'm just talking, right? I'm just telling you what I know deep in my core. And I'm highlighting what we just experienced in a symposium with Cornell. Again, Cornell has a diversity, equity, and inclusion certificate. I did do that. Was one of the programs that I did, and again, over a year ago. But it was exceptional. I thought it was really well done. It was very basic, but it was well done. And the basics are missing in most companies, right? Like, you can say a thing, but are you really doing it? So I would highly recommend this Cornell diversity content. And for the next 3 days, we'll be bringing additional content. Today, I just wanted to have another meeting in a few minutes, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to put my voice into the universe, just to document what we know to be true. So, code switching, again, I'll go back to that, is this idea of, that Black people or others often, are successful because they have to navigate interracial interactions, for their well-being, for economic advancement. Some of them say even for physical survival. They fit in, they assimilate in a different way, in such a way that it changes their style of speech, their appearance. Again, curly hair or braids, like I wear, may or not have been acceptable in certain corporate environments not that long ago, right? So changing your hairstyle, your behavior, your expressions in a way that will optimize the comfort of others. And they say that's in exchange for just fair treatment, quality service, and equal employment opportunities. So this idea of code switching says, you think about who you are, changing your language, but the physical aspect of it is saying, I'm really not able, to bring my true self, right? If you're seeking to promote inclusion and address social inequity, it says you must begin by understanding why some people feel that they can't bring their whole selves into the office. Now, today we heard a lot of really intense examples of people talking about their experiences in their companies, right? And things are still happening today that are less than ideal. Some things are happening that are freaking traumatic. And someone asked us about our whys. And my why, again, most of you know I'm a leader with the National Black MBA Association. Excited to have someone else come into that leadership role here in the 2023. But I've been in this leadership role, which is all volunteer. It's just because we want to drive change. And so if you think about us as a community, a nationwide community that wants to drive change, this is really the space where we, have to pause and decide, am I going to be the change that I want to see? We have this Cornell community, and there's a chat, where people are supposed to connect. And I'm going to invite Cornell graduates or people that are going into the program. But I'd like to invite them to bring the conversation outside of, like, we can talk to ourselves all day, right? That's not where change is really going to happen. I like to say we get to decide what success looks like. We get to decide. And if collectively we were actually driving a different conversation with leaders, really helping them to understand that here's how you can deliver and really truly create an inclusive environment where everyone feels like they belong, like they can bring their true self. And again, it's not just about having courageous conversations, because to be honest, you can have a courageous conversation, but the term that I use in my work is, having a courageous conversation is great, but really, it's really about having these intentional activations. What new behaviors are you going to implement within an organization, right? I mean, we're all operating inside of a system, and systems are designed to maintain the status quo, right? And what that means is systems are designed to kind of operate as the systems are designing. They're not broken, they're operating exactly as they were meant to design. Even if the outcomes that you say you want are not the outcomes that you get, it is operating exactly as it was designed to operate. So when you want to change a system, you have to actually change the people in the system. Policies change, practices change, processes, all that. Policies, practices, and processes, all those P's change. But the biggest P is the people. The biggest P is really touching people in their hearts and their minds so that they are making different decisions moment by moment, right? I call them bigger than me moments, right? Deciding that I'm not going to allow this outcome. If something doesn't seem right, guess what? It's just not right. That's where the justice part of a conversation comes in. And a bigger than me, again, this is my terminology, part of my proprietary methodology, is really allowing people to elevate the conversation beyond you and the other person or you and a team or whatever, but really taking it to another level so that as Deepak Chopra says, so the observer becomes the observed. When you're looking at a situation, you're able to be a little bit more pragmatic, right? You're looking at the processes and the steps and how do we actually change the outcome, right? It doesn't matter what the system allows today. If you want to change the system for the better, then you change the outcome, right? You got to do things differently. We have to do things differently, right? So it's about us as leaders. It's about allies, right? It's the change happens because we create the change. Okay. Well, I think my system is telling me that it's time to end this live. So I am. Thank you so much. We will do this again tomorrow. I may come back on. Someone has been DMing me. So I'm going to follow up on that. I've gotten 2 or 3 emails and 4 text messages from our summit today. So thank you all for checking in. I felt the love, and I honestly feel the love from this group. I think you're all amazing, but I do think we have to step up differently. We can't talk about change. We have to be the change. So I'm just going to show up, continue to show up, and ask you to do the same. Thanks. Bye.